Morning, Cindy. She's from ESAConnection as well.
Good morning.
So you guys have 3 ESAConnection. So good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for attending our collaborative webinar this morning with CogniTutor. They're over in Florida joining us. So I'm going to hand it over to them, but just real quick, from ESAConnection, we have Chris and Cindy and myself. And then we have Hannah and Giselle from CogniTutor. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Hannah. Thank you so much. Excuse me, go ahead and hand it over to Giselle. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending with us today. All right.
Absolutely. Thank you again, guys, so much for participating in this webinar. I'm super excited to share all the great things we have to educate everybody and get people more familiar with what executive functioning is and where it trails down to, and how to just use that overall as educators and to help bring up a generation that can control this and overall have much more positive outcomes in their work, performance, and ethics and academic careers. So just to get everything started and get us all settled in and get everybody in the right mindset going into this webinar, I did want to go ahead and give everybody kind of a little chance to share about what their current profession is and how they are expecting to learn a few things about executive functioning that's going to relate to how they're going to implement it in their profession. Me, myself, I had a master's in administration, and I have been working with CogniTutors for the last few years. Prior to this, I was working with children who do have learning disabilities and how we can use things like their cognitive building and their executive functioning to help them improve in their academic success. And this is how this stuff relates to me, and this is how this stuff is really great for me to learn about. And so if we want to go down the list, whoever wants to go first and volunteer, I know we have Chris, Cindy, whoever wants to go ahead first, please do.
Well, I'll be more than happy to start.
Yay.
So I'm a special education teacher. I've been in the education field since 2004, and I went private education in 2015. I'm over here in the West Valley. I'm always wanting to learn about executive functioning. It's so complex, and because there's so many different areas, but it's also a key. And I've just known that a lot of parents and a lot of educators, this is the one that baffles them the most and frustrates them the most. And so I've just always been looking for more skills and strategies in this area, because it's just the one that it's the missing key in a lot of programs. So, Absolutely. All right, who would like to go next?
I'll jump in. So I'm Chris. Jamie and Cindy and I are partners in ESAConnection, a company that we set up back in November. I've got a various and long business background, but I've done sales management, and even what we're doing today. I think being a leader and being out there in the world, you run across a lot of people with executive functioning. And I've actually been told in a seminar before that if there's people with executive functioning on your team, it's really hard to maybe make them gel sometimes with the rest of the team. And I just don't really believe that. So I'm kind of hoping to get out of today learning more and getting a deeper understanding of how, in the mix of managing a group of people to accomplish a common goal, how, there's a place and how to best motivate and work with people with executive functioning.
Yes, absolutely.
Cindy, do you want to go?
Sure. I'm here today to also, just like Tammy and Chris, learn more. I think the more you learn, the more you grow. And I can't wait to hear what you guys have to share. I know that a lot of people have this, have executive functioning, and I want to be able to bring that to my tutoring. And I think that learning skills for anyone is great to use. So I'm hoping to learn a lot.
And I thought I'd just to keep it from being awkward, Anissa, do you want to go?
Sure, yeah. Sorry, I had my camera off, little ones in the background. I'm Anissa Tripoli. I actually work for with Kimberly. She's trying to get logged on with Tutor Doctor. So I'm actually an education consultant. And so we, of course, try to encourage more executive functioning with our tutors and the students. And I'm actually a classroom teacher who has been doing like my own tutoring on the side. And so I definitely can see the benefit of learning more about executive functioning and teaching that to my students.
Thank you. Claire?
I have taught for many, many years, and I've been working with a micro school. This will be my 4th year, and I've gone private this year with ESA funding only. And I just want these kids to be able to have executive functioning skills. There's more of them that don't than that do. And I still am dealing with the problems of my children not learning them. And I want these kids ready for the world because I feel that it's one of the most important skills you can have. So I'm excited about learning more as well.
Awesome. Hannah?
Yes, I'm Hannah. I'm the marketing expert / social media person for CogniTutor. And for me, understanding these concepts just helps me reach the audience or the target market for us.
Yeah.
Beauty. And then I think Sharon is the last one.
Good morning, I'm Sharon, and I'm currently an adult basic education instructor for Rio Salado College. I work with adults who are seeking their GED. I teach math. And I've also spent many, many years in the homeschool world working with children in that setting. And I'm here basically just to learn more about executive functioning and the role that it plays in learning, as well as any insight into strategies that are based on executive functioning concepts that I can use in teaching. And I'm on the brink of starting my own business to serve the ESA community as well.
Oh, that's so exciting. Do we
All
have
right.
more participants?
I think that's it, Giselle.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I just want to thank everybody for sharing and participating in that little activity. It's super important for everybody to get a specific mindset as we're going into all the information. And it's apparent that we have one overall general goal, which is we want to learn more about what executive functioning is and what role it plays in educating children and to help students. I think it was Cindy who said prepare them for the world and have them be have a better future and prepare them for things like, you know, an adult life, working, marriage, raising their own children. It all comes down to whatever executive functioning skills they've been able to develop throughout their life in a certain time frame. And so just to get right into it, let's dive into the meaning and definition of what executive functioning is. And just before I go into the definition, I want to take a few steps back so that we can get an idea of where the origin of executive functioning lives in the body and how it's developed, right? So in the center of every person's brain, we have a set of skills that are developed from birth to kind of adolescence. I want to say about going into the 25-year-olds. That's kind of when we stop developing executive functioning, or where it's kind of a set build of what we've been able to do since birth. These functions are called self-regulation and executive functioning. And this part of our brain, we're actually not born with it, right? We are building it throughout the specific time of living and growing, and it's something that is developed. Again, a very specific critical time frame of our lives when we are building self-regulation and executive functioning skills. And these are necessary and key ingredients for us to just have a lifetime of positive and productive performance, right? These skills are super important because they are exactly what contribute and determine the overall productivity of any student or individual's work performance. And there are a few key things that come within what executive functioning means. I would say the 3 key things, and this is something that I've learned based off of doctors and researchers and scientific facts and statistics. These 3 things are inhibitory control, working memory, and cognitive flexibility, which is also known as mental flexibility. This is just 3 of many, right? Executive functioning also comes in with self-control, time management, getting tasks done, putting together a to-do list, multitasking, blocking out distractions, and all of the different things that come and contribute with how well or how poor an individual performs. But I would say the 3 key things that we would need to work on from when children are at a young age and learning to build their executive functioning skills are these 3 listed things over here. And just to give you guys a little bit of a visual of how we can understand what executive functioning is, and now we're going to go into the meaning of it, right? One thing that I've learned as I'm learning about all of this and educating myself about it a lot of educators, doctors, again, professionals have compared executive functioning to an aircraft control system. And this has to do with the fact that aircraft control systems need to manage lots of airplanes going in and out to different destinations, the takeoff, the landing process, and exactly
Thanks for
when
being willing to try this. I don't know if it'll work.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, sorry.
No, you're good. And so as I was saying, things like when it comes to an aircraft taking off, landing, these systems have to figure out to perform specific type of signal for a specific function at a very time. And so children also have to manage a lot of information. How to use this information, distractions.
Giselle, I'm sorry.
I appreciate it.
Can everybody but Giselle maybe mute?
Yeah, there seems to be a little bit of an echo. I think it's good now. I'm just going to go ahead and repeat that last bit of information because of that little echo that was happening. So when we are trying to kind of compare executive functioning in children to an aircraft or an air traffic control system, similar to an air traffic control system in which they need to figure out where all the airplanes are going, the different destinations, taking off, landing, and when to use each appropriate function and signal it in a very specific time frame where that function is needed. Children also have to manage information in which they're being taught and processed, and how to use this information, and how to avoid distractions that are uncontrollable, right? So now, taking into consideration these three key factors, to put this into kind of an example situation, when kids are growing up and they're learning, a lot of times different type of activities and playful toys and stuff that they are sharing with other kids involve things like taking turns. When a child is taking turn in an activity or an assignment, or just playing around with a group of kids, they are enforcing these three different key factors of their executive functioning skills and practicing it. How this is done is, for example, when it's not their turn and they need to kind of resist away from performing whatever information or task that they are doing, they need to use their inhibitory control system in their brain to understand that it's not their turn and they need to stop. Right? And then when it is their turn, they need to actually remember the information that they were just doing or about to do because it's their turn, and they have to apply it. This is where their working memory comes in, and they're practicing how they have memorized the information that they are performing in that specific time. And their cognitive mental flexibility comes in situations where if a student before or after them have actually done something different than what they've expected, right? So now this is where their cognitive flexibility is going to come in to, let's adapt to the situation. Let's do something different. So it's not just feeding them information that they know and that they should memorize, but it's actually teaching them how can they use this information and change it based on their adjusted and different circumstances, right? So that's just a quick example of how teaching kids these three key factors of executive functioning from when they are very small children and just learning the most basic things. This all contributes to them developing these skills as they grow, right? And to give you guys a little better of an idea of how the executive functioning part of our brain works, it really does all go down to every person's brain. I think Tammy at the beginning of our session, before we were waiting for people to participate, said something super important. There's nothing wrong with any person who has a different learning ability than the rest or than the majority. There's nothing wrong with any child. There's nothing wrong with any student. It fully just depends on how that student or individual's brain is developing or has been developed throughout their years. Like I mentioned before, this is not something we are born with. It is something that we develop and build throughout our lifetime. And so the part of our brain in which is more so responsible for executive functioning skills is the front part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex over here, as you guys can see, right? And this is where the functioning skills are not stored here, but rather they are controlled by this part of our brain. With that, that's not the only brain involved in executive functioning skills, actually. The rest of the parts over here that are laid out are also involved in executive functioning, but these different parts of your brain over here, as you can see, are the parts of your brain that store different types of functioning skills. the prefrontal cortex over here at the front of your brain are what control which function are we using at a very specific time when it is needed, right? And so to put that into simpler words, in this next picture over here, we've listed out the different types of functioning skills each part of this brain will develop, right? So we have the emotions, the reactions and responses, the memory, the error processing, and so on and so forth. And over here, the prefrontal cortex, like I mentioned, we have now titled behavioral control. So this is the area in which we develop and we help children develop from a young age all the way to when they're teenagers and their early 20s. We teach them to control this part of their area to process and signal all these different functioning skills that their brain has the capacity to hold, right? And how well this part of your brain is developed and how the different factors and environments a student has been exposed to is going to depend on the level, how high or how low their executive functioning skills are. Does anyone have any questions on that before I move on? Just to make sure everyone's on the same page. Perfect. And so let's move on to kind of how we can improve the executive functioning of each student and how what different factors kind of affect our executive functioning skills. Why does one student have better executive functioning skills than others? It's not really a situation where people don't have executive functioning skills, but it is different levels. And those things are based on things like how the brain is developed from when the child is young to how they're old and what factors have contributed to that. In general, our brain develops starting from the very back to the front. So the part of your brain which is responsible for storing and controlling the executive functions that we're using is actually one of the last things that is developed as you are growing and as you're developing as a human, right? And so this is why there's a very critical time frame that's important to train students and children on how they are going to develop their executive functioning skills. This is also affected by things like genetics, right? If you have a student who has very low executive functioning skills, it's more than likely that one of their parents has low executive functioning skills, right? And also contributed by their living environment. If students are constantly exposed to high stress levels or traumatic living environments or family problems or different living situations in which kind of limits their mental capacity to be available to learning executive functioning skills, this is also going to affect how well or how low they're able to perform executive functioning wise. Right? How can we make this better? This is similar to going to the gym. It's not a case where there's no hope or this is how this person is born, we just got to deal with it and go. No, it's never like that. We can always help children and students, even if they're older, to improve their executive functioning skills. This takes practice, patience, and time, similar to going to the gym, right? So if there's specific parts of our body, whether it's health-wise or appearance-wise, that we wanted to improve and just kind of make better overall for more positive outcomes and living circumstances, you go to the gym, you eat better. And that is all done by consistency and lifestyle and dedication and commitment and time and patience. This is all things that we need to work on with not just the student, but the educator, more so the educator than the student, because the educator is who is going to set that path straight for the student, right? And so constant practice, right, to make the part of your brain that we mentioned, the front part of your brain, responsible for executive functioning, super strong and super able to improve, right? So the constant practice, and in a little bit we'll go over what type of practice we can do to improve these executive functioning skills. The patience, right? So not just the student needs to have patience, but the educator needs to have patience. The educator needs to have the patience and the flexibility to attend to each student's learning, unique learning abilities, right? So just understanding that student and being super patient, repetition, right? Time, consistency, repeating it again and again, and the time and patience practice all linked together and must have a stable sort of consistent level together in order to be able to achieve the outcome of improving the overall executive functioning skill of a student. Now, going into how CogniTutor have spent years and years of research and trial and error and statistics and building out different sort of programs and sessions and kind of creating what different can contribute to executive functioning and can overall improve this, we have come up with a program in which we call Learn2Learn program. And it is something that we teach teachers how to do, and it is something that we directly teach students as well. And so this type of program is very much so focused on executive functioning and how we can do the things that we just mentioned of how to make it better, the practice, the patience, the time, and what type of activities will have that overall impact and effect to increase and make executive functioning stronger in students, right? No matter what age they are. And it is also something that can be very tailored and very specific to match each student's level and where they're initially starting, right? So the program entails things like solving problems that keep students from being independent learners. So not just teaching them the material and moving on, getting them to pass and moving on, but actually teaching them the material while teaching them these different executive functioning skills that they can take on and use for the rest of their lives and be not just successful in the specific class they're taking with you or their specific grade level that they are going through and accomplishing with you, but the rest of their lives as well. And the skills that learners have that other students don't, training them to learn as best as they can now and in the future. And it is also suitable, like I said, to train the teachers how to do this with their students. And we also provide this directly to students as well. And just to give you guys a little bit of an idea about what the Learn2Learn program entails, we have about 50 sections of the Learn2Learn program. And so I figured, why not do a few of minor examples of how we have put together this program that involve the things that students can practice and participate in that is going to overall make their executive functioning skills stronger, right? So things like setting SMART goals. This is something we do with them probably every day or every other activity or assignment we start, right? Setting them some SMART goals that they're able to sit down and not just get something done, but understand what is the overall goal of what they are doing, measuring that and making it relevant for whatever their outcome goal is, whether it is to graduate high school, whether it is to move on to middle school, and also kind of put in a little bit of a timely factor, teaching them time management. So all of this is going to contribute to their overall executive functioning skills outside of just the top 3 key ones we mentioned, but more so into getting into different habits that help them overall succeed and reach a goal that they have set for themselves. A lot of times with students who struggle with executive functioning skills, and this is something that everybody has fallen into, right? Educators, parents, higher authoritative figures. It comes down to when a student is not performing as well as other students have portrayed to perform, or is not on task, or is being sort of resistant to following instructions or being receptive to information that's being taught to them. Adults have went into different sort of alternative measures such as punishment or consequences, or trying to call out the student to get them to be accountable for their actions and get them to change those actions to better actions. But a lot of times we fail to realize that if a student is not performing as well as we would like them to be, it's not just because they're lazy, or it's not just because their willingness to do this and they're purposely doing it. It's really because the part of their brain that is being developed to help them get this task done is struggling a little bit. And we just need to attend to those struggles, break down those walls, and help them improve on that so that they can actually perform in the way in which we have expected them to and achieve the goals that we want to help them achieve, right? So a little practice that we do with them is getting them to set these SMART goals. And this is something that they can use not just with whatever assignment or whatever test that they're preparing for. This is something that setting SMART goals is something that they can do right off the bat when they're applying for a job, when they are wanting to start their own business, when they are going to college, whatever kind of lifetime goal that they set for themselves, they're going to get into the habit of, let me break this down for myself so that I have proper organization skills, so that I'm doing this in a timely manner, and so that I can stay focused and block out the distractions that are going to keep me from achieving this goal. Another type of activity we do with them is getting them to understand the different mnemonics of memory, getting them into habits and teaching them different styles of how they can memorize something, which is one of the key contributes in areas of executive functioning, their memory and their ability to store whatever information that they need to remember for whenever they need to apply it, right? And so we have different type of tactics that different learners and different students, depending on their unique learning abilities, can learn and apply to their academics and their day-to-day life routine, in which is going to help them overall improve that part of their executive functioning skill, their memory, right? So things like coming up with these little techniques, which are, they can rhyme. Things like fanboys and different examples like that, in which help them reflect to what information do they want to go back to. And a lot of times it's stuff that we remember for the rest of our life. For example, Roy G. Biv, I remember learning this in probably middle school, and I remember it until now, right? And when I have kids, I can teach it to my kids. And this is what we want the students to learn. We want them to learn little things that they'll be able to remember for the rest of their lives, and they'll be able to go in and apply it when they find it necessary. Not just learning it for the purpose of passing the specific chemistry exam and whatnot, but actually applying this tactic to whatever situation and circumstance that they are dealing with at the time, right? And so this is going to help with their memory skills, right? Another thing is like logic puzzles. This gets them to kind of expand their cognitive flexibility and mental ability, right? So we do a lot of different logic puzzles with them within the actual program. So giving them always a little brief, giving them a little brief introduction on what type of activity we're going to go to helps with getting them in perspective and keeping them involved in what expectations we have for them, and puts them in perspective of what is the goal of this and what will I benefit, right? So always keeping them in the loop makes them feel valued and makes them feel like they're important enough where I'm communicating this with you so you can understand why we're doing this. Puts them in the right mindset of doing it and makes them 100 times more receptive to actually absorbing it and the willingness to do it with you and learn it, right? So we give them a little brief summary of what this logic puzzle is, and it is a game that actually requires them to think and solve problems in different ways, testing out all their mental flexibility and expanding it, training them and practicing on how they are able to increase the boundaries of their cognitive flexibility right now, right? And so we give them things like these different maze puzzles over here, in which require different cognitive thinking, and every student is going to answer this differently. We can get them to do this once, twice, 3 times, and it's a huge key within this program to teach them and understand as an educator that you will fail, and it is okay to fail. And the way that you're going to learn and the way that you're going to improve on this skill is to fail. You might need to fail once or twice before you get it a 3rd time around. And normalizing making mistakes and normalizing that students can need to like kind of fail. So in a situation where it kind of needs to get worse to get better, normalizing that idea and that strategy versus expecting them to get everything right the first time around, especially with a student who has low executive functioning skills, is super important. This is what's going to get them to be super receptive and not shut them down entirely, right? And we have other strategies like avoiding burnout. So teaching them the importance of, we want you to learn this. We want you to expand your skills in this specific sector, but we also want you to understand that you need to take care of yourself, understand yourself emotionally, and respond to the mental and physical signals that your body is giving you, letting you know if you're at capacity for the time being, or if you need a break, or you need to take a step back. And it is okay if you need to do that. If there's a bunch of people in your group that are okay and they want to keep going, and they're able to kind of absorb and receive a huge chunk of information at a given time, but another group of students is not able to, they need to understand that that is okay, and they can take a break, and they just need to attend to their specific unique learning abilities. If they're able to get in that mindset, then they would be able to attend to their learning abilities and make something out of it. Learn about themselves first and how they're able to physically and mentally and emotionally process information and use that to their advantage. So it's kind of using their weaknesses to make it their strengths, and to kind of advance and emphasize what their strengths are, focus on that, but also understand their weaknesses so that their weaknesses are not used to bring down their strengths, if that makes sense. So these are just different things that the CogniTutor Learn2Learn program entails. Like I said, there's about 50 other sections, which include activities like the ones I just showed over here in my presentation, that all kind of factor down to one goal of working on a very specific type of executive functioning skill our brain already has, not born with, but needs to be developed. And it can also work for any age group. It can be from all the way when they're able to start reading, when they're younger, when they're in preschool, when they are in high school. So, and based off of the age group, we're able to put together a program which is specifically adapted to that age group, which is going to be most beneficial and get the most optimal results for whatever age group that student belongs to. So for this portion of my presentation, and after, feeding everybody with all that information, do we have any questions here?
Hey, so I'll start it because there's two in the chat, but they're really the same questions. Sharon just put it a lot better than I did.
Absolutely.
Is there evidence that EF skills can improve in adults? I'm sure neuroplasty allows for it, but are there any studies? Is your program at all geared towards adults?
Yes. So now the brain itself at around the age of 25 is when the front part of your brain responsible for executive functioning skills will stop growing, but it is never a case where that part of your brain can stop developing or improving in a way where let's use what we have to make it better, which comes with things like practice. Just to give you a little bit of I want to relate my answer to my personal experience. Working with learning students who have learning disabilities, I have worked with students from all the way from probably 3 years old to 35, right? Because this is something that people can struggle with all the way until they're like late adulthood. And it is definitely something that I have seen improvements on, but it does take specific consistency, practice, time, and patience. And as individuals are older, these factors become kind of higher, right? So we need more consistency, we need more patience, and we need more time as they become older, because you start to become in a certain part of your brain where I'm an adult, this is set. It becomes more difficult to change because that part of your brain is no longer growing. It's kind of set. So now I want to change the growth that I have or further develop it. So it could take a little bit longer as we're digging down into those roots versus if you're teaching a child, that child is kind of fresh off the bat and has a clean slate, and so you're able to implement a foundation which you choose to implement. So it's definitely possible. It just might take a little bit more time, patience, and dedication. And if you have an educator who's able to provide those specific factors, it's 100% a goal that we're able to achieve. And we do have programs and statistics that show the success of doing that.
I guess it's kind of synonymous to an adult learning how to play an instrument or speak a foreign language.
Yeah, 100%. It's really, really dependent on practice. As we grow, for example, I love the language example because, you teach kids how to, when they're learning how to speak, they're most likely going to just pick up whatever language that they're hearing around themselves, whatever their language their mom and dad is speaking. But if they're a full-grown adult and you're getting them to learn a different language, it's going to become much more difficult because you're not developing their language skills. They're not learning language as they are learning their verbal skills and developing their verbal skills, but they are learning it when they're adult, and that part of their brain is already kind of set. So it's definitely possible. It's just going to take a little bit more time and dedication.
Other questions? That's all we had in the chat, Giselle.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Perfect.
I have to say that in working with these adults that are coming back to school, I do an orientation with them, and I include SMART goals. And I will tell you that is one of the single most difficult things for them to do. And I hadn't really connected that to this whole executive functioning thing. So it's really interesting that you put that together, because I see many elements in these adults that they're lacking these executive functioning skills, and that one is a glaring one, that they are totally unable, especially to put a time frame. Their planning skills are very poor. So it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as we're down to this, and as we're relating to all the information, you know, I just kind of presented, their ability to put together things like SMART goals and time frame is going to go back to how have they learned to do this throughout their lives, and how has their brain developed in terms of their prefrontal cortex kind of signaling the part of their brain that is responsible for things like time management and processing tasks and understanding the capacity of each task and the timely manner each task is possible to take. So the ability to do that is not impossible. It's difficult, but it takes time and it takes practice, and it depends on what sort of development and experiences that they've had as they are growing. So it's starting from when they, you know, go to school, or when they're in kind of pre-K, or when they're in some sort of educational environment in which they have exposure to other students, to actual educators, and the ability to work in a group, all the way to adolescence and until their early 20s. So it's until about 25 where that part of your brain stops developing and it's been fully developed. But the consistency of the skills and the advancements of the skills is never kind of restricted or limited as to, okay, this is impossible, it's too late. It's never too late. It's just that now that we have a fully developed part of your brain that is so used to doing something and is so used to performing in a certain way, now we have to kind of change that. So it's going to be a little bit more difficult. Same thing about same sort of concept when I was referring to the gym. When you grow up you know, in a fitness environment and in a healthy environment in which you are very much educated and taught right off the bat to have a mindset of your lifestyle is important, your health is important, and going to the gym, being active, eating healthy. If those things are stuff that's implemented as a young child and as you're being raised and by your family, it's going to be easier to maintain it and continue it, and you'll find yourself in your 30s in great shape and in great health, right? But if you're in your 30s and you've been kind of raised in an environment where you know, almost every day is junk food, we don't really need to exercise, and so or if you have a history or genetics of obesity or being overweight or low sort of activeness in the family, when you start to reach an age where it's older, it becomes more difficult to change that, and it becomes more difficult to lose weight when you're older, right? But it's not impossible. It becomes more difficult because you need to kind of completely change a foundation that's already been built and set for many, many years. It's not impossible, but it's difficult. That's why it takes a little bit more education, a little bit more practice and patience and time.
Great. We have a couple of questions. Anissa?
Oh, yeah. You had mentioned that there were 50 sections or 50 sessions.
Yeah.
So I was just curious how long each of the sessions were and just like the duration of the entire program.
Yes, absolutely. So the duration of the entire program and the frequency is going to depend on the student. Like I mentioned, we can make each program very tailored and very specific to whatever student we're dealing with. This type of program can be given in a group setting or on a one-on-one basis. We're also able to teach this to a group of teachers. A group of teachers can take this program as a workshop and teach it to their kids, right? So it depends on the setting and the environment that we're going to look at. The one kind of session could take an hour, right? Depending on the student. And sometimes it could take an hour and a half. We don't really recommend going more than an hour and a half with students who have low executive functioning skills, so that they're able to kind of take a break and allow their brain to process the information instead of just overfeeding their brain information and not really getting any quality results. This could be stuff which teachers can kind of implement this type of activity at the beginning of their session really quickly with a group of students that they're dealing with that they know have low executive functioning skills. It could be where tutors are working one-on-one with a student and they have about 2 hours and they want to do more than one section and more than one topic with them. So it really just depends on the the learning environment that we're looking at, the frequency and duration can be definitely altered and filtered to attend to the needs of the student that we are working with, whether it's a group or whether it's one-on-one. We have Learn2Learn programs that go for a whole year where we help kids as they're transitioning from elementary school to middle school to high school to now you're going to college. What are you going to do in college? Helping them apply for jobs, helping them apply for universities, helping them pass their SAT and ACT. So depending on what the set goal is and what group of students you are working with, there's going to be a program that's going to fit their needs, and it's going to have the proper frequency and duration that's going to be optimal to get the results based off of that specific requirements.
Anissa, did you have a follow-up, or?
Did that answer your question?
You're muted there.
There we go. Sorry, just looking for the button. Just another question I was curious about was just how do you have any like assessments, or is it just referral based with the students or the adults in that case? Because you had mentioned it could be one-on-one or even a group setting. So do you have any specific assessments or anything that you use to identify these kids or these students?
Yes, absolutely. We have pre-assessments that we can give students, right? If we have a group of students in which, and sometimes this is things that can be identified before we give them the Learn2Learn program. So schools and teachers, just by getting to know their group of kids and getting to know who they're dealing with, depending on what kind of age group, they're able to really quickly pick out and identify which kids are the kids who have lower executive functioning skills. Those are typically the kids who are resistant to following the instructions and getting the task done effectively. So it's not hard to identify which children need executive functioning skills help, kind of more assistance and support with improving those skills. But we do have pre-assessments to give to gauge kind of where they're at. It could be academic based, it could be kind of like based on how they are processing certain information, how they are answering. It could be things like a little logic puzzle. So again, it's going to really depend on the information and the situation that we're dealing with. But in general, it's so important to understand that any student's intelligence level has nothing to do with their executive functioning skill. So it's not something where it's like one student is passing or one student is academically performing much higher than another, so that student must be more intelligent and so on and so forth. But it's and a person who has good executive functioning skills versus a student who doesn't does not mean that their intelligence level is not the same. They could have the same exact intelligence level, but not have the proper development or support with developing their executive functioning skill. So it's nothing that's kind of gauging their academics. It's more so gauging their cognitive thinking and their ability to memorize and their ability to use the tasks and functions that we have mentioned within their brain development, how they're using it and how well they know how to use it. So there are different assessments that can gauge those things and place them in different levels. And based off those different levels, we also have a starting point, right? They can start all the way at the beginning, or they can start however low or high they are at the moment. But one thing that a lot of educational companies, especially things like private public schools mostly, we don't spend any time talking about this. Executive functioning skills and teaching kids how to be studious and how to adapt and have habits throughout their academic career and lifestyles, and that they can take on through college and through their adulthood and getting a job and having their own family is something that is not focused on. It's not really spoken about much, and it's not something that is taken the time to teach kids. And so it's a lot of curriculum and material based focus information, but it's not I'm teaching them the material, now how can I teach them to apply this material? This is kind of where the gaps and the cracks come in with how we've been educating our kids.
Tammy, I think you have a question.
Yes, this has been fantastic. There's a lot of information. You hit on a lot. So I really struggle personally when parents come me and say, I want to do an executive functioning curriculum, especially for older ones, because they need to have that knowledge. So when you just teach it as a lesson, they don't always retain it and apply it. And that's always a problem, right? So I focus on more application and saying that I really do executive functions as a secondary skill. I teach it within the general academic. So that's my one question is like, your worksheets are beautiful because they need that content piece. They need to make sure that how to do a SMART goal, how to do even awareness of what metacognition is. But how do you, especially in your tutoring session, ensure the application to ensure that they carry through and start doing those techniques and those strategies? So the piece that I struggle with when doing an executive curriculum is seeing them carry on. So again, like I said, I really focus more on doing like a natural approach. So the question was, what are some ideas and strategies for application?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great question. Again, this all comes down to how we're teaching them, right? So we could still sit there and teach them all the stuff in the Learn2Learn program and all the great things about how to work on their executive functioning skills. But unless we are making sure that this information not just has been absorbed, but it's been understood and comprehended how to be applied, it's going to be the same exact thing as teaching them math and English, right? So we have to make sure that they are applying the skills that you're trying to teach them. That is included in things like you mentioned, when I am teaching them an academic session, right before I start, I want to go ahead and teach them, okay, let's set some SMART goals for the specific task. You have an English assignment, you have a math question, you have a SAT, ACT testing score, because we also have an SAT, ACT workshop that works a lot with how can we make their cognitive thinking go into the exam. I want to collect as many points as possible and I want to get out. I want to pass, right? How can we get them in the mindset of that? We do a lot of things in terms of constant repetition and practice applied into the academic portion of the session. So a lot of, right, we've set our SMART goals, now what? Right? It's not so more, I am telling you what to do. It's, I'm going to teach you this specific skill. We're going to set our SMART goals. Now let's move on to applying the SMART goals. You lead. Now relate back to the exercise or activity that we just did that's going to set us straight with this specific session, right? With this academic goal that we have that has kind of advanced your executive functioning skill and is going to work on your executive functioning skill, but allowing the student to take control and slowly apply what they have just learned is the steps to achieving this academic goal is what's going to help you practice it. So always remembering to not answer the question for them. So if we're going to ask them a question, or we're going to tell them, how would you move on from this? Or how would we do this? Or how can we apply this goal that we've set? What do you think we can do in this specific situation? Getting them to think about the answer to every question we have, even if it's incorrect, is a huge key. So we're getting them to process things in their brain. We're not telling them the right answer because, again, giving them the answers and giving them the strategies and giving them the stuff that they need to know to figure out how to achieve a specific goal is not helping them process things or work on those executive functions. A lot of times, and I've seen this myself with educators, you'd be in a classroom and the teacher is lecturing and they're going to ask a question, what do we do here now? And there's no answer, complete silence. The teacher is going to go ahead and answer that question because we need to move on and we need to get to the next topic, right? But you answering your own question, you've just given them the answer. They have not processed things. They have not used their cognitive ability to try and process the information you've already taught them to answer your question. And so you've completely distracted that and interrupted that thought process and thinking function that they can use and improve to answer your questions. So getting them to understand their mistakes, not just pointing out their mistakes, getting them, asking them why. I'm a big person on why. I'm going to ask you why down to the T, right? I'm going to constantly investigate with the student until I am very, very sure that that student knows exactly why they did what they just did, right? A lot of times when I am training other tutors, they find it a little bit ridiculous how many whys I ask when I am explaining a certain concept. I could explain it to you right now, and I could say, my name is Giselle. What is my name? Why is that my name? And that's exactly how I do it. And that's what's going to really kind of implement a very specific step in their head that they are going to constantly repeat. The key is repetition, and the key is patience and consistency. If they give you a wrong answer, then you want to ask them, why is this the answer you chose to give me? Understanding their thought process and where in their thought process they went wrong, and getting them to realize it. So not just we are realizing it as the educators, but helping them understand what they've gotten wrong in that thought process and what needs to be changed and corrected in that thought process is going to always have this carved, implemented memory of, I got this specific step right or wrong because Mr. So-and-so or Mrs. So-and-so went down the list and really broke things down and dissected the process for me of how the outcome of whatever goal we got was XYZ. So it's really, really important. And this is where the patience comes in, right? So the patience of really dissecting things down to the T, even if they've given you the right answer 10 times in a row, or even if they've given you the wrong answer 10 times in a row. You want to dissect things down to the T, because that's where their brain starts to implement and understand patterns that are successful and that they're going to implement the next time around and constantly do that then. Does that answer your question?
Tammy, did you have a follow-up?
No, I have I mean, no.
Hey, so I just wanted to make,
Yes, I think you reiterated a lot, but it has to be the application piece that has to be done naturally within a session. But I think too, your reminder about asking the why answer for them and not leading them, but really like checking for the understanding. I think that's really key. That was super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So in situations where we're getting them to set their SMART goals and we're helping them right off the bat identify what kind of game plan, right? Going into a certain assignment, game planning it. Once we're done game planning, you don't want to give them the actual instructions. What are we doing next? Or why are we doing it? Or go ahead and do this. A lot of times that's the mistake educators do. They're giving plans and instructions, yes, to get them on the right path and to get them to perform a task correctly, but you want them to do it. So we've just set a game plan, get them to tell you the next steps, and you're really closely supervising them and not even correcting them, but when they're wrong, you want to stop them and you want to get them to investigate, okay, why did you take the step? And slowly, as you are investigating the step, if they have been mistaken, they are going to catch that mistake somewhere in that process, because you've dissected every step for them. And so instead of them wanting to jump straight to, okay, I want to get this done, so I'm just going to do this, it could be wrong, but you're getting them to slow down, and now you're getting them to understand the process. And if there's something incorrect in that process, because you're dissecting it with them and having a conversation about it, not answering it for them, but they are answering it for themselves, they're going to catch their mistake and correct it. Next time around, they're not going to make that mistake.
hey, Giselle, I kind of wanted to make a statement and just get your thoughts on it. To me, like coming from a business world, like, I did all the education stuff years and years ago, but then I've seen it applied day in and day out in a, very competitive sales. I mean, this is it. You go out there and you either sell and make your number, or you go to work someplace else environment. And I just want to, so what I'm hearing you say to me, in a business world, we always had this concept, and when we were teaching management or managers, there's mentoring and there's coaching. And mentoring is you're in a hurry, things are just blowing up, and you got to just give them the answer. That's not the best way to do it. Coaching is where you ask those why questions. That's one point. The other point the dot I want to connect is, to me, this is like Socratic method. It's, the Acton Academy uses it. I mean, it's you have like, you don't give the kids the answer. You got to guide them to the answer, and they may come up with A, but they have to come up with an A solution and a B solution and the why. And then I went ahead and put 2 links in the chat, because like Dr. Jordan Peterson he's got this thing called self-authoring, where, it's basically looking at your past, looking at where you are today, and looking at where you want to be in the future, and then putting those SMART goals in place and how effective that is. And then this guy, Jeb Blount's got emotional intelligence, which to me is just another way of saying executive functioning. And he's written a book on it that was one of the best books I've ever read and executed in a sales team. And it seems like all these things, it's really just executive functioning. Everybody just calls it something different. Is that correct?
I believe so. Yes. I think that it all origins from the same place, which is executive functioning. And executive functioning goes all the way down to how well has your brain developed and how much do you want to work to further develop it. And it does all come down to the same thing. The way you kind of manage and juggle your emotions, the way you juggle your time management skills, how successful or how far you go with your work position, or what your goals academically are. Some students just want to pass and some students want to get a scholarship. And it really just all depends on what that person's set goals are. If they have the correct path and they have the correct guidance, they're going to be able to know how far they want to go with those executive skills and how much they want to improve it. And definitely the Socratic method is something that we really, really very religiously go by at CogniTutor, and it's something that we teach our tutors right off the bat. We teach them, do you know what the Socratic method is? You got to use the Socratic method. Investigate constantly why. But another thing that we do teach the tutors is you're not there to be their teacher. You're there to be their mentor, which finds a huge balance between the how are you coaching them and how are you mentoring them, right? So you want to get them in a situation where you're earning their trust and earning their respect. You're not just another person that's going to go in there and tell them what to do. You're going to tell them all the things that they need to succeed, and then you're going to walk them through how they're going to apply those steps. So it is initially going in as a mentor, but you got to also apply those coaching strategies and tips and tricks to get the result that you're looking for. So it does require a certain amount of balance and expertise, which is why our tutors are actually very highly trained, and the quality of our work ends up being so much different than everybody else. So when we come down to certain services, we want to figure out, number one, what is the outcome that everybody is looking for? Number two, what are they doing now that's kind of, causing a barrier to get to that outcome? And number three, what can we do differently? So our goal is we want to go in and do something different that's not already being done. So if you're going to put a student who has low executive functioning skills in a math class, and you realize they're not doing well in math, you don't want to just go in and say the same information twice. You want to figure out, why are they not absorbing this information? You want to attend to what is stopping them, breaking down their walls to their unique learning abilities. Attend to that first, and then start teaching them the information. Because once you can attend to the root of it, then they're going to be receptive to and absorbing to whatever it is that they are having difficulty and struggling with. So I definitely agree that it all comes down to the same thing, and it all comes down to how your brain has been developed, and it's all really just one section of executive functioning. It's named different things based off of the different levels that we're kind of talking about, but it does all jot down to the same origin and the same area.
Well, I can tell you it's the single most important thing to determine success in what my experience has been in the business world at a very high level of sales functioning. The emotional intelligence and executive functioning is critical. So did you want to put, I know we may have some more questions, but did you want to put a link or anything in the chat that if folks want to, contact you and maybe do a course, like they can do that? Because everybody will have access to this on their calendar. They can go into the chat and access these links, and then we'll send a recording out to everybody later. But you can also go back into this meeting and get the recording after about 20 minutes after I stop it. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, I will have Hannah actually go ahead and put in the chat our CogniTutor website and my direct work email. So if anybody in this webinar who participated is interested to know more and to actually take the workshop and actually, go through with the program, you can definitely contact us or submit a ticket through the actual website as well, just to get some feedback. And I can answer more questions as well. Does anybody who has participated, and then just after kind of absorbing all this information, I'd like to get feedback on whether or not you think you would want to take the full program, the full workshop, and how your feedback is kind of in that sector.
And Giselle, Sorry, I was going
Sorry.
to just
Did you want
say,
us to maybe put our answers in the chat
Yeah.
or just like thumbs up if we want to do it?
Whatever works.
What
You can
would you prefer?
Yeah.
whatever's easiest.
Yeah, how about we put our answer in the chat? If everyone could, if you are interested in learning more about the program, if you could put a yes simply or a thumbs up in the chat, then that will give them some sort of indicator. I'm also going to follow up with follow-up email. I'll make sure to have their contact information there so you can follow up with them. Do you guys have, because I know your professional learn is usually in schools that you go to. Do you have like a session coming up for, you know, us other entities that are not related to are not connected to a school district?
I'm sorry, it kind of cut off in the middle of your question, Tammy. Can you just repeat that one more time?
Do you have a webinar planned that's not for us private educators? Do you have one planned?
One planned in terms of like the actual full program?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
I know you mostly do in schools and districts.
Yeah, absolutely. But we have done that tons of times. I'm actually working with a medical school in New York so that we can teach certain educators about Learn2Learn and how important executive functioning is and what they can practice and use to improve executive functioning. And so we definitely can provide this service virtually. Our service this like entire program can also be bought to give to teachers to implement this with the students as well. That package kind of also includes like probably an hour and a half session of a guideline of how to use this program and all the sections it includes and different structures of how to implement this with a group of students. And this is specifically for educators and professional educators as well. So yes, we can definitely offer this service virtually and both in person.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely. Yeah. Is there any other questions I can answer today? So I'm really happy to have gotten the opportunity to share this information with everybody, and it's really truly been a privilege to be able to raise awareness on this, and it is something that I am super passionate about. It definitely hits home for me, and it's definitely something that I wish that the kind of educational sector all over the U.S. Pays more attention to and invests more time in providing this type of thing for our children.
Agreed. Well, thank you so much, Giselle, for us today, ESAConnection, and collaborating on this webinar. I think we all were able to gain some new pieces of information about executive functioning, and I'm really excited by Learn2Learn. Just, I agree with you. Everybody needs to know about executive functioning. That and learners, it's such a key to success. So anyways, thank you so much for everyone for attending. We're going to go ahead and end the webinar.
Thank you so much.
And I have all the contact information